Dampa is a popular Filipino game. It's a game called Lastico of rubber bands. The game is played by the rubber bands in the vernacular known as Lastico. Dampa means moving the bands of rubber by touching their hands with the air released by them.
The hands should be placed palm blocks down and arched like a dome to create the compressed air until we reach the floor. A minimum of 2 players will play this on any flat surface. The aim of the game is to shift the rubber band from one line.
This is a game of rubber bands called Lastico in Filipino. Dampa involves moving the rubber bands with the air produced by hitting the ground with your hands.
To produce the compressed air, the hands should be put together, palms down, and arched like a dome before hitting the ground. The objective of the game is to move the rubber band forward from a line.
In Filipino culture, Dampa is mostly played on the ground since table is set up in.
The sequence of the players to Dampa depends on the agreement of the majority. Most of the time, players will have to show up with their own rubber bands, and in some cases, players can show their mastery just by showing their collection of rubber bands.
Dampa can be played anywhere as long as the platform or ground on where the rubber bands will be placed must be flat and should be free from any potential dangers such as needles, rocks, and other sharp objects.
In Filipino culture, Dampa is mostly played on the ground since table is set up enough space and players, in which most of the children have a hard time positioning the table. So yung Dampa is usually nilalaro talaga siya sa mga floor or sa ground.
Materials in playing Dampa. This game is called Dampa. This is a game of rubber bands called Lastico. Dampa involves moving the rubber bands with the air produced by hitting the ground with your hands. This can be played on any flat surface by a minimum of 2 players. The objective of the game is to move the rubber band forward from a line.
To produce the compressed air, the player's hands should be put together, palms down, and arched like a dome before hitting the ground. Your hands should be capable of doing such skill or you might have a hard time winning.
Dampa involves moving the rubber bands with the air produced by hitting the ground with their hands. Players should not clip the rubber band when doing the Dampa so as not to forfeit the turn to play.
If a player moves an odd number of Lastico beyond the service line, he will continue to play. The turn to Dampa will only change if an even number of rubber bands is displaced. Then, the opponent will have the turn to play.
All players must wait for their turn. If a few rubber bands were moved accidentally, players should return to its original position. Meanwhile, if almost all of the rubber bands were moved in a chaotic manner, the game will reset.
The game Dampa showed the values that can be learned by the players as they play. Players may obtain the values of patience and respect since it would take time to have their turn, along with many other players.
Players may also learn about physical fitness, self-worth, and self-esteem as they have to estimate their strength and showing others on how to execute such skill.
Values when playing Dampa. When playing Dampa, players obtain values of patience and respect since this kind of game takes time to have your turn along with other players. Physical fitness, self-worth, and self-esteem can also be learned as they have to estimate on how to execute such skills. Fairness and honesty are also present in this kind of game.